Large, extra
you're
large,
6'4", 190.
6'5", Afro 6'6".
Okay.
What about Fletch?
Grew up on the mean streets of Harlem, and boy, does he have a good shot. 5'11".
For Don. Who's it now? No, it's Kavanaugh. Oh,
Okay.
Maurice Pierre, Sally Ann Kavanaugh. Okay. Hey, the green room's lit. The show is on, and we're live. Let's go.
Let's go, my friends. Rob Brown, Brendan Martin here with you on this Tuesday morning. It is October.
It's a beautiful morning.
Golly, can you believe it? It's October the 8th already. I know everybody's getting ready. We've got Hurricane Milton out in the Gulf.
This is going to be such a shit show.
You don't see it yet, though.
No.
Okay.
This one's a quick one.
Yeah,
fast.
It's
mover.
out there in the Gulf, folks, and so we're gonna be covering a lot today, all over the place. Chris Lee, Southeastern 16. Bo Carter, National Football Foundation, will jump in. A Vandy alum. He's pretty proud this week. Rodney Orr, Tider Insider. Yancy Porter Rebel Yell Hotline. Smash that subscribe button in the bottom right-hand corner. Share the link. Share the show. Tell your friends.
Like the show. Share the show. Comment on the show.
Comment on the show. Who loves you, baby? That's what Kelly would say. Who loves you, baby? Hey, who loves you? Look, we got a fun one today. And look, we'll be right back. Get pen and paper handy because you're going to take a lot of notes because you know what? Cold beer and country music T-shirt. You can get them at Hewlett and Dunn. We'll talk a lot of sports right after this.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Chris, I can imagine what it was like for you Saturday. Audrey and I were up in Fayetteville at the Arkansas-Tennessee game, and there was an emergency. Vanderbilt on the verge of a significant football win. All units respond. Let's talk about that. And did you see it coming? And did you get a chance to talk to who I think is the Mickey Rourke of the SEC, Diego Pavia? This guy is he's tough, but he's real tough. Maybe the most impactful player in the SEC this year in terms of a newcomer.
Yeah, I do this thing every so often. Like they're just Vanderbilt's been blown out so many times the last few years. I mean, when they play in Alabama or somebody, they've not been close. So there's always this little thing because every once in a blue moon they pull a stunner, but it's been a while. And I thought it just doesn't match up well for them. They can't cover Ryan Williams, the power running game. They won't be able to control the clock. You know, they got one turnover all year. Chances are they can't keep that up. and then this happens. You know, I did draw up the victory, the formula for victory for them. I said, you've got to control the ball, keep the clock, keep that offense off the field. But man, they had to execute that to perfection. It had to be no turnovers. It had to be maybe you get a pick six. It had to be you don't, commit well, actually they did commit a hold that wiped out a touchdown, and they won anyway. Yeah. But most everything had to go right for them to even have a chance, and it did.
Watching the game, I was talking with a close friend of mine, Stephen Patrick Walsh, who's a Vanderbilt alum, lives over in Atlanta, and he said, Bobby, I think the Doors are going to beat Bama. And I said, you mean cover or beat? He goes, I'm talking straight up. And he knows football like very few people do, like a scientist. And I said, I'm going to take Vandy to cover. He goes, Bobby, he kind of explained it. And I'll just say this, it wasn't a fluke. They never trailed.
Yeah, let me give you a long story, and I'm going to bookend it with before and after the game, but it's pretty remarkable. I've got a 21-year-old writer who goes to Lipscomb that does stuff for me really good, does a lot of our football coverage. And he calls me, says, hey, we did a pregame show, and C.J. Taylor said they're going to beat Alabama. He's their starting safety. I'm like, what? What? He's like, what do we do with this? I said, well, let's not – our job is not to protect Vanderbilt, right? But I also don't want to put a 20-year-old kid who wrote a story for me in a bad spot where they get, the brake speed off them, and then everybody's pointing a finger over here. You just, as an adult, you don't really want to do that. And so I said to him, and I had a busy week. I said, hey, let's talk later, but maybe we can put it out there on run the video, and if people figure it out, they figure it out. But let's not lead with it. And we had some kind of a miscommunication, and next thing I look up, I come up from mowing the yard Thursday or Friday.
I know this feeling.
And he, not only did the story run, but it led with it. It's like, hey, let's maybe take down a tweet or two and maybe take a quote out of it. I mean, and it was obvious that C.J. Taylor was still saying we match up with them well, but I didn't want my kid being the focus of front page ESPN News. And lo and behold, C.J. Taylor called his shot. And I was in the locker, or not the locker room, I was in the press conference room afterwards. And the weird thing was, like, you're walking through all that and you're just going, did this really happen? I mean, everybody's just kind of a little bit in shock. And I'm walking through, I had to take an extra, an entrance to the building I never take. It takes me through the coach's offices, and coaches' families were in the offices, and everybody was kind of calm. Like you would have thought that you had heard this jubilation that, and it was just kind of almost like they were either, and I thought at the time, everybody's just in shock. And even in the post game, you walk in, seeing the players and the coaches walk in, and you're not hearing, celebrations down the hall. And I thought, they're still stunned. And I go back later and find out C.J. Taylor wasn't the only guy that basically said, we're going to win this game. I guess there were some hints dropped other places. And so I'm not sure if they just were so stunned or they just expected it all along. But either way, it was – I've never covered anything like that.
What was the secret sauce? Why would they just come out and say that? I mean, there got to be something there.
Well, you walk back 2 weeks ago, and they play at Missouri, which was number 6 or 7, and if they kick a field goal, they go to triple overtime with the chance to still beat Missouri. They missed a 31-yard field goal after the same kid had hit one from 57 early in the game. Yeah. So I think they felt like they left something on the table that day, and then they had 2 weeks off, or they had a week off to get ready for Alabama. And I don't know, and I'll ask this today a little bit more in the presser, but they changed some things with the offensive line. I guess they found some things that they, penalties, as disciplined as they've been, penalties have been a big issue. They've been, I think, bottom 10 or 15 in the country in yards and penalties. That got fixed for the Alabama game. And so I don't know. I can't tell you exactly what happened. I will tell you that the blueprint had been out there for people paying attention. But it's one thing to execute that against, Virginia Tech, and it's another thing to do it against Alabama.
Well, I mean, I think Brendan and I would, and you would agree, that first game against Virginia Tech, when they didn't find ways to lose it at the end, that told me there was some difference in this team.
Yeah.
And I think Clark Lee, he's an MBA guy, the scholar, the gentleman scholars. He's got a lot of pride, and he's very smart guy.
Well,
hell of a defensive coach.
Yeah, and like you said, Chris, Vandy always comes up with a shocking win, usually against Florida. But last couple of years, but you start seeing this progression. Talk to me about look, it's a big win, no question, but it's a huge win for Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
What does that mean to the program? I mean, it's like your season is. You could end the season now, and that's a win for you.
Yeah, it's hard to say. Things are usually they're not as bad as we thought they were.
Clearly not.
against Georgia, coming into the season, or when they lost to Georgia State, and you thought, well, there it goes. But like usually things are not as good as your biggest. But they've never had one like this. Now I will say, last time they beat Alabama, it was 84, but 84? That wasn't. Yeah, and they finished the season 5-6, and then they went 3-7-1 the next year, and they fired the coach. So, and I wrote a thing about it, and it's free; people can see it. But it was just kind of things I took away from that game. And the last thing was, this is kind of what they make of it. Their NIL has been a kind of a mess. They rallied it in spurts enough to get players for this team that are making a difference now, but there's been no consistency of effort and no real plan. Usually they get very content when they win a game like that. And, hey, see, everybody was wrong about us and we proved you wrong, and they don't really do much about it. So I think to me it's now it's like it's different than it used to be, right? You can you can pay players and stuff. I mean, you couldn't do it before, but people did it anyway.
Right.
Now you can really sort of leverage the way the system is to your advantage. And look, there's a lot going for them, man. As you guys know, Theo Vaughn was on the sidelines, getting camera time. I mean, you got people all around the city like that. I mean, here's the weird thing, like I felt like people of every type and whatever were coming out of the woodwork to. This city's just. I feel like this city just sitting there waiting for them to do something that they can get behind and. We'll see if they pull it off. It's not the most kind of well-oiled machine from the top over there, and I don't know. Maybe this lights a fire on everybody. I've seen some signs that it has, but it's just hard to say because this situation has never been in existence, for long, and they've never won a game like this. It's the biggest win in the history of the program.
Did they think about taking the goalposts, the students, and parading them through Belle Mead?
Well, they did.
well,
they did.
Why not?
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say that the only thing more remarkable than winning that game was the goalpost story.
Yeah.
I'm sitting. That was awesome. Watching that, and like there's a million jokes about they're not used to this, and they would all be right.
What?
But I guess the way they do the goalposts now used to be those things came out at the root. Now I guess they're so concreted in that they don't come out that way. And I'm like, why are these kids having fits getting this thing down? Well, I go down on the field after the game and the goalpost snapped off, where it starts to round from it didn't snap off in the ground. And so you've got a 5-foot stump of a goalpost sticking up and they had to literally break it in half.
Well, we were in, they're different. We were in Fayetteville up there watching that game. And I was with our guest, and they said, I don't think they're going to do it. I said, no, it's going to happen if you, watch out. And it did. But they pushed a button. It was like the Bat Cave. And the goalpost at Arkansas went down electronically and laid down.
That's the new style. Vandy doesn't have to worry about that
I don't think that was on the radar of concern.
No. That was like, well, we can. That's on the budget item. They're like, well, we can probably push that one down.
Yeah. And by the way, I want to ask both of y'all. I put this out on Twix yesterday about the Tennessee player when Malachi, the quarterback for Arkansas, was going in for that touchdown. My wife goes, that Tennessee player looked like he stepped back from him. He didn't want to tackle him. And I put it out there and I said, can anyone explain this to me? And I've heard, well, they wanted to let Tennessee score so they'd have more time. They wanted Arkansas to score. Yeah. So that's just that. I have never heard that. I mean, you when you start allowing that, I mean, y'all seen that player. What was y'all's thought?
Well, you've seen it in the NFL from time to time. And I don't think it was a horrible play because if they run the clock down, they got a chip shot field goal with I think, an experienced kicker. So I don't have a lot of issue with it. I get why they did it.
I do too. I think it's a slippery slope too, and because you start scrutinizing every single time a player makes a decision. I see it. And I get what you're saying. Look, do I think the introduction of NIL and money and all that stuff, starts to make a difference potentially to somebody who is, I don't know, in trouble with the IRS or gambling or anything like that. Yeah, I think that's going to be a problem. I think it will always be a problem and has been a problem in just different ways. I just think a lot of it's more transparent. So, that's a tough one because I've seen it from the lens of a TV truck, right? And Rob, I've told you stories, which I won't go into what specific teams or whatever, of back in the day when slow motion replay for like NBA was done for the refs in the truck, and the home feed would feed the truck the replays, and like, well, looking for the foot on the line or whatever. I mean, look, all sorts of this stuff goes on once you start to look at it. I'm saying anyone's taking a dive or anything like that. I'm just saying that I think at the end, you hope that it all sorts of evens out in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I do. Bo Carter's going to join us in a minute out in Dallas. The national. He's a Vanderbilt alum, Chris, and he's been an SID at Mississippi State and Big 12 Southwest Conference office. So I know he's been just bouncing off the walls. What I wonder about with Vandy, and we've talked about the 35 or 40 big donors that they have, and all the schools have to have them. This is the kind of thing that this is red meat for them. But then there's got to be follow through. You think it'll ignite boom Cumberland?
We'll see. Rumor was somebody made a pretty big pledge yesterday. I'm not sure if that's true or who it was. I have my guesses, but I mean, I think they put the goalpost up for auction, little sections of it, and I think they sold a first round of that out pretty quickly. I mean, I had an attorney buddy of mine that texted me and said, there's a lot of gloating going on in offices this morning, and with a lot of guys that can write large checks, and I think that's what they have to tap into now.
That's good gloating, I'll say.
But I think you're right, though. I think if there's a program, that is sitting waiting, that is just perfect. You've got everything right there. You've got money, town. You've got, everything you could imagine for a program to pop off. Vandy's got all of those ingredients.
Yeah, and they've never tapped into everything at once. I mean, here's the thing. The number that I heard that they raised for the roster, and boy, it bounced around a lot of numbers. The number I heard for payroll of this team was about $6 million. Whether that's true or not, I don't think any of us can ever know for sure. But that seems to be the number that's stuck as it's made the rounds. And Clark Lee did that with really nothing to sell. It was kind of like, well, we think we can do this. We believe strongly we can do this. You'll help. But it's another thing to write a 7-figure check to a guy that's not done much for a program that's lost for 60, 70, 80 years straight, whatever it is now. There's a proof of concept that just happened. It's really, other than when Franklin won back-to-back years, but Franklin's tenure ended in scandal and made it really hard for the next guy to win. And you guys know the story of that. So these are uncharted waters.
I'll tell you one thing. I think everybody out there, this season, you got to watch the games. Thursday, I was on a show. I was like, okay, Missouri, they're going to beat A&M. I liked it, but I didn't know Connor Wigman was going to play. And that kind of happened Saturday, and it was too late for me to reverse my pick, and I would not, but I got burned. But every game that you watch, they're exciting, and everybody's got players. If you had a chance to talk to Diego Pavia, he had like 70 family members. Where's he from? Albuquerque, Santa Fe? Where's he from?
I think so. We did get him in the post game. I've never sat around with him one-on-one.
Yeah.
I love that kid. Just from what I see of him, the raw honesty. I've stood next to him.
You're 6'8", aren't you?
5'11". We're close.
Right. Afro.
Subtract
6'9".
about a foot. But no, I'm hold on. I'm probably in the neighborhood of 5'11", and I'm pretty sure I'm taller than he is. I mean, you would not, if you walked the streets of Nashville today and just ran into 10 random people and said, "Who's the quarterback of Vanderbilt?" There's a chance you'd get it wrong.
There's a chance they would say Vanderbilt's got a football team.
Well, that too. I think people know that after Saturday, but
this was. I mean, again, college football. What is it? I mean, Alabama. This is what I've been saying. That now, Kalen DeBoer and all the ice cream truck and all the. It's so much more fun around here without Coach Saban. You tell that to your fan base now.
What was it? Rocky 3 when they came in and like Rocky's training and he's got all like the fanfare going on. You kind of wonder if it was a little bit like that.
And then Burgess Meredith, come on, Rocky, you're a bum. You're all washed up. You better come back, or the guy's gonna kill you. Come on, Rock, you got this. You need Burgess Meredith on the sidelines, don't you?
That's my favorite one.
Well,
all mic'd up.
Yeah, you asked what is college football. I think this is what it is. It's becoming a lot like the NFL in terms of the parody, but with a lot more. It's got like the personality of professional wrestling or something. It's a lot to me. It's just a lot more interesting.
Diego Pavia's post-game comments were Ric Flair, Bill Dundee, Jerry Lawler. I mean, it was exciting, and there was a little bit of beep, 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 but he's passionate. I mean, if you can't follow that guy into fighting a game, you got no blood in your body. I mean, don't.
Sorry, I'm an animal outburst back here.
That was funny. Did he mimic Rob? I felt like the dog mimicked Rob's.
Yeah, but it's exciting. We've got ours. I've got mine locked up right now. The new one, Daphne. She's a howler.
Mine's in another room, and you can still hear it.
Yeah, and I've got a fan blowing by her. But I hope Bo can get in. I don't know what if he's he said he's having technical issues. Bo, join us when you can. But here I want to ask you now, Chris, because I wanted Bo to come in here and interact with us before we go to Yancy and Rodney. But you look at the big picture. I don't know what the ratings were on the Vanderbilt-Alabama game. Okay. And I look at this game. 4 million people is a good one. 12 million was Georgia-Alabama. That was pretty cool to watch it. But, every game's on TV now. So I don't know what that Alabama game got. Have you seen the numbers?
No, I saw a vague tweet somewhere that said right now I think more people are watching that game than any other sporting event in the country at that time, or maybe it was a football game. I don't know if it, how it stacked up against the playoffs in baseball. But, yeah, I mean, I don't know how you even determine that. I guess with the technology now you can. But I don't know what the final numbers were. There's been a lot of things running through my head. I mean, it's like every time you think about what happened Saturday, there's like something else that you didn't think of that stood out. It's that.
I know you got to go, so just a couple more minutes. Thanks, sure. Chris Lee with Southeastern 16th. I get that right? 16th? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Great website. Check it out. Great information to get all tons of it. What's next? What's next for Vandy? What are they going to do here to really finish it off? Have a decent season, or what's the schedule and stuff look like for them?
I think if you get to 6 wins and get to a bowl game, and look, that is still that's not going to be easy. I know they beat Alabama. People are thinking, well, they beat Alabama. They're 3-2. Surely they're going to a bowl. Look, they got Texas up. They've got Tennessee up. They got a really tough game with Kentucky Saturday. They got Auburn. They got South Carolina. Any of those teams can beat them on a given day, and they're going to be underdogs probably in all those games. Maybe not South Carolina. We'll see where that is when we get there, and that game is here. But they haven't won that game since 2008, I think. So they've got one layup in between. That's against Ball State, which is awful. But the second worst team on their schedule, beat them. So I think if you're Clark Lee, you've got that in your back pocket in case you feel like you don't have people's attention. But I think you get to a bowl game, like people sniffing 6-6 bowl games, and usually you do. But if they get there, they'll have pocketed wins over Alabama, Virginia Tech, and 2 more SEC teams.
Florida.
Yeah, well, now Florida's not there this year on the schedule,
I'm joking.
but I mean, this is one year they maybe wished that it was, but
I'm glad I'm not playing.
If you're Auburn, you'll take 6 and 6.
LSU, a road trip to LSU's on there too. So like, if you run that off, I'm just going to give them Ball State. But if you get 2 more somewhere, say even if it's South Carolina and Auburn, that's an accomplishment with what you banked. And if you're respectable in those other games, and look, they haven't been blown out yet.
No.
They've had 4 games that have gone down to the final minute.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you have to look at that and say, hey, that was 6 and 6 with a bullet.
Yeah. Well, Chris,
yeah.
I mean, let people know how they can follow you. We'll do this again next week. Always love having you on because this is great insight. And if you ever want to bring Diego Pavia on with you in the studio, man, I want to hear his philosophy on life because I think he's one of the best stories in college football this year.
Yeah, and
his team.
He's kind of like Vanderbilt. He's the perfect guy to lead this team. Like he will drop an F-bomb in a press conference and then 15 seconds left, apologize and talk about his faith in Jesus. It is really something else. And I love it. I think he is the guy that this fan base was waiting to fall in love with, and I think everybody is. It's a great story, and I'll see him at practice today. You can catch our Vanderbilt stuff at vandysports.com. We've got a podcast. We've got a YouTube channel, and I probably spend more time, maybe not this week, on Southeastern 16. That is where we cover all 16 SEC teams in football, baseball, and basketball. And frankly, it's taken most of my time just because there wasn't much to talk about on the Vandy end. But this has been a week where everybody's coming at me from that angle.
Yeah, well, Diego to Vanderbilt is what Waylon and Willie, the outlaw country David Allen Coe, were to the Nashville country music old guard. Minnie Pearl, Roy Acuff, Jim Reeves. They got who are these people? Willie used to wear a suit. I mean, he looked like a preacher until he went back to Texas and hooked up with Waylon. But hey, great stuff, Chris. You work so hard. Appreciate so much what you do. Have a ton of respect for Southeastern 16. Love the logo, and have a great day.
Yeah, God bless you guys. Hope everybody, Brennan, especially you, stay safe. I've not studied the weather a lot, but the hurricane stuff I saw last night on Twitter looked kind of terrifying. So prayers for the folks down there.
Yeah, it's pretty much gonna hit us pretty much straight ahead. So I'm off the coast, so.
Well, be safe.
No storm surge, just a whole bunch of wind.
Well, God bless you guys.
Thank you. Same to you as well. Have a great day.
Talk to you soon.
Love having Chris on, Brendan. I mean, what they do, Southeastern 16. Bo Carter was having some trouble linking in this morning, but he'll be back on. We'll get back on tomorrow. Yancy Porter join us in just a second, and Rodney Orr. Brendan, looking at the games coming up this weekend, I'll tell you one that is kind of funny is that Florida-Tennessee game because, people will say it, nothing succeeds like success. Winning begets winning. Go Gators. Mm-hmm. Is the Florida fan base, and you know it better than anybody, and your dad and the whole Gator Bait team, do you want to win or do you want to just get rid of Billy Napier? It's impossible to pull against your school. I don't know how you would do that. What's the temperature of the Gator fan base? Because it's a big fan base, massive.
I think the temperature is always the same at Florida. You want to win no matter what because it always matters in the SEC, as you know, of bragging rights. God Almighty, do you think we wanted to lose at home in the swamp at night against the Knights, the UCF? I mean, that's a whole year and 2 years of just endless beratement at the water cooler. So these things matter. Do you want to, like you could never pull for your team not to go into Knoxville and run in there and pull off an upset. I think everyone wants Billy Napier to be great. I think if he pulled out a rabbit out of the hat, especially with Alabama losing, it's got to give you a little bit of half a breath. But I think Billy's biggest thing is the same thing that we see all the time, even in a win. We talked about it yesterday. It's just, you look at, quarter 3, 0 points, quarter 4, 0 points, defense struggle. Like, it's sort of the same thing. You can't go into Knoxville and Tennessee. You can't win in the SEC on the road or at home like that. So you just can't. You can't you've got to put your foot on their neck and finish it off. So it is just the code of the SEC. What is Johnny Knoxville Ballpark Franks? I call him Johnny Knoxville. I know it's not his name, but Johnny Ballpark Franks says, I blame Steve Spurrier. Well, maybe we do. Maybe Spurrier likes to run up the points and do all that, but that's the mentality. That's the mentality in the SEC, and I think Florida and Billy needs to adopt that. I know there's a million other things, and we could talk about X's and O's, and sometimes I like to talk about the intangibles. Some of those things that we don't necessarily see on the field every Saturday, and if you're closer to the program, these are the things that you talk about.
Well, you look at it with Tennessee. Nico Iamaleava in his 2 road games at Oklahoma against Brent Venables' defense and against Travis Williams and Marcus Woodson in Arkansas, he's, dazed and confused. Yeah. Great Led Zeppelin song that they took from Howlin' Wolf or Muddy Waters, one of the great blues singers. But think about this. This is 2 straight games, and Josh Heupel's offense looks
I like Josh
like
Heupel.
they're struggling. Tennessee, they had more talent than Arkansas, more talent than Oklahoma, but they're not getting going early, and they're letting these teams that they're favored to beat hang around too long. And I'm telling you from experience, and we all have this experience, you can't make a living doing that. I mean, Tennessee now, they got their loss out of the way. So just like Ole Miss, and Yancy Porter joins us. Catch him Monday nights, 6 p.m. Sports 56, WHBQ in Memphis, the first radio station to ever play an Elvis song. Dewey Phillips, Red, Hot, and Blue was the name of that radio show. They damn near ran him out of town, and at least 7.63 million people that grew up in Memphis claim to have gone to Humes High School with Elvis. I just threw that in for historical purposes. But also Super Talk Mississippi, you can catch him Monday nights. Harry Harrison, Gary Darby, Chuck Rounsville. My man Gordon Ford, I talked to him 3 times yesterday. It was so good to do that. Love that guy, Yancy. Rebels went on the road in a desperate position, and I picked them. I said, I think they go over there and they win going away. They jumped out 14-0. And J.J. Pegues from Oxford High School right there in Lafayette County scored 2 touchdowns, and Ole Miss took care of business. And now they go from the frying pan to the oven to play LSU Saturday.
Yeah, they did what they needed, right? It was a must-win game. They won comfortably, but they didn't play a clean game. Offensively is mainly where they didn't play clean. They didn't get the ground game going. I think they ended up running for 120, 30 yards, maybe 40, but when everybody in the stadium plus your wife is sitting next to you knows that you're going to run the ball, can you run the ball? And Ole Miss, continues in SEC play. It's only been 2 games, but they're not able to, to milk that clock. When you get a lead right now, in the past years with Q and guys like Snoop Connor and these big physical backs, you could take 7, 8 minutes off the clock, but they're not able to do that right now. And that puts your defense in position to be on the field a lot longer. And that's their kryptonite right now is that run game, which has been a staple of Lane Kiffin, since the day he entered at Ole Miss. So they've got to get that fixed.
Yancy Brendan here. You hit on an interesting topic that I think I've been talking about for about, this week, which is, we're seeing teams, the Texases and the, take any sort of any bigger team this year, and we're seeing, I guess like third and fourth quarter, inability to sort of finish them off, right? To sort of like, get, start going smash mouth football, take the fight away from them, run the ball down. We're seeing a lot more of I'd say trickery plays, stuff that you're going to see more towards the end of the season, stuff that coaches save till that, like, great, playoff game or whatever. I feel like we're seeing a lot more of that now from these other teams, because there's this inability to sort of, finish off the other team. Is that because, like, there's just more parity out there? Are you seeing sort of that? Are you seeing the Lane Kiffin and the ways that he was taught to sort of coach? Maybe that needs to be modified.
Well, I just think everybody has warts, right? And I see Ole Miss's warts because I cover them every day. And I'm sure that there's not a team in the country that you could speak to someone in their media and they not see their team's warts. And so it's just really surprising, though, because Ole Miss is that close to being just a really dominant team this season. And the one thing that they've always hung their hat on is running that football, and that's their weakness this year. It's very surprising. Quinshawn definitely hurt in the worst way. They weren't able to fill his shoes, but the refusal to give Bentley a chance, even in the
Yeah.
last series of the game with Ole Miss up 4 scores, they still had in their number 1 and 2 tailbacks. Didn't even give him a carry then. Both those running backs, Parrish and Jones, got banged up with we're talking about under a minute, and they still refused to put in Bentley even after they got banged up and use Jackson Dart, their starting quarterback for quarterback keepers. It's just
Yeah.
it's the weirdest, most mysterious thing since I've covered Ole Miss since the 1990s. What's going on with their star running back, Bentley, and why they refuse to put him in the game?
Yeah. I mean, after all the 6 games, he's got 11 carries. Is that correct?
Somewhere around that. He has not carried the ball in SEC play. I don't know. Nobody knows.
Yeah, he's on the conservation plan. It is crazy. All right, Rodney Orr, Tighter Insider, folks. Only $48 a year since 1996. Forget about it if you're trying to cover Alabama, because it's all about Tighter Insider. Rodney Orr. I don't think a lot of people saw Vanderbilt beating Alabama Saturday. Like I said, we were up in Fayetteville for the Tennessee-Arkansas game. And it happened. What were your takeaways from that game? What's your post-mortem? And what are some things that you were concerned about that surfaced and they got to be fixed?
Well, Yancy mentioned warts.
Yeah.
Every team has warts, like he said. And right now, I don't know if Alabama's got anything that they can remove their warts anyway. And what I mean by that is, and I said this going back weeks. Actually, I think I told you guys on one of our segments here that I got a little bit roughed up on TighterInsider.com because I had Alabama 5th in the SEC.
Yeah.
They beat Georgia. That's the best win in college football probably this year. So I bumped them up to number 1. But there was still that question I had about this defense. Yeah. And that is a huge question mark. I don't know if they can get it fixed or not, but they're giving up gashing runs. Guys are getting free in the secondary. Pavia on a 4th and 1 play has a guy, 5 yards behind Malachi Moore in the end zone for a touchdown. It's just not the last 6 quarters have been a debacle. They were, Vanderbilt 12 of 18 on 3rd down.
Yeah.
The conversion downs, Alabama can't stop anybody. Georgia converted all those 4th downs. So, I'm not trying to sound dire here, but other than the first half against Georgia, the defense has been, just hasn't caught my attention. It hasn't in a good way. It hasn't impressed me. And again, I want to be clear. I'm not trying to be negative. I'm just trying to say that I know what Alabama fans expect. They want to play for their national championship. They want to win the SEC, all the things that come with it.
Yeah.
But unless they get this defense somehow magically better, then it's going to be one of those seasons where Kalen DeBoer's offense is going to have to score a lot of points.
Rodney, and this is just, I got to say this because we all lay it out. We don't hold anything back. When I was at media days and we're talking to the players of all the different schools in those breakout sessions, and this is back in July, I thought it was disrespectful. I mean, I know they were trying to be cute for shits and giggles, but I didn't like it. They were talking, someone would say something about Coach Saban, and they would say, Coach Saban is no longer in the building. He's an external factor, and kind of grin and laugh, I mean, I didn't like that. And I was like, that's not very smart, because this is a guy that, yes, he was paid well, but he did put his heart and soul into coaching Alabama and making those guys better. And over $2 billion worth of NFL contracts are proof of that. And we heard all the stuff about practice is fun. There's not all the yelling and screaming and cussing. And they brought the ice cream truck and Roll Tide Willie. And it's just
there's a lot of that. I'm gonna just slow you down for a second.
I'm curious what your thoughts are on that. Yeah.
That's I don't know about the comments at SEC Media Days, but all this other stuff, they lost to Vanderbilt, and all of a sudden everything's a disaster.
No, I didn't mean it that way.
No, not you. I'm not talking about you. What you're saying is exactly right. That is what fans are saying. All of a sudden they're talking about ice cream. The ice cream wasn't about having fun.
Yeah, I know.
The nutritionist at the University of Alabama, the team nutritionist, that is something she came up with, because what it does after the benefits of that, eating ice cream after a 2-hour workout, strenuous workout. I mean, anyone that works out understands these are kind of things that you do, after a strenuous workout. It had nothing to do with having fun. The music, it was blaring in the spring, but it really wasn't it hasn't been as prevalent. It wasn't in August. I mean, they play some. I mean, I don't think all those things really. The bottom line is this, Rob, is, there's been a transition. Anytime you have a transition, and especially a transition of this magnitude, there's going to be first-year issues. Sure. They always come up. They're going to come up every single time. But here's the thing. How do you manage all these issues? And the truth is, they lost a lot of really good players on defense from last year. Yeah. They've had to piece together a secondary. I don't know if I like Kane Womack. I'm not going to be critical of him at all. I'm just going to say that, he's got a chore on his hands to get this defense to play. Yep. They got gashed up front against Vanderbilt. So those are the real issues. No, I don't think all that other stuff is really something that's significant.
Yeah, and I was just commenting on it because the way you got to have fun. And by the way, thank you, and I thank Yancy and everybody watching this show. We can now claim nutritional value with ice cream because I love it, but it is a fact, because I've done a lot of triathlons, and I do all the swimming and biking and running. Chocolate milk is a fantastic tool.
Maybe the best.
I drink organic chocolate milk after intense workouts. I've been doing it for decades, and it helps in recovery. It absolutely does. Just like I know this is crazy, but the East German runners taught Americans and people around the world years ago, the day after an intense competition, a marathon, a triathlon, whatever, get up the next day and still do a light workout so that lactic acid doesn't turn your body into concrete. But yeah, I like hearing what I will just say this. Yancy, comment on this. I think you look at the hard driven, but we're not around practice every day. We don't know how intense they are. When you push people really, really hard, and I've got 4 kids that'll tell you what I'm like, Years later though they'll come back, and Yancy and Rodney, y'all know this because between us we've got 10 kids. So Yancy, jump in on this thing, and Rodney, I'm glad you said what you said.
Yeah, I just think like Rodney said that it's more of the Jimmy and Joe's. Um, look, Lane Kiffin's practices, there's music blaring. They have snow cones after practice. They got somersault dunking contests during practices. They got wiffle ball contests, pickleball after them. I mean, he tries to keep it fun, and it doesn't seem to be hurting that program at all. So I don't think it's about the transition from grinding and the Nick Saban era to maybe being a little bit more relaxed and having fun. I really don't think that's what's going on with Bama. I just think, going into the season, the guy that was supposed to, man, the field corner for them, Trey Amos, is now at Ole Miss, is doing an outstanding job, and they've got one of the best DBs in the country. Went to it was it Ohio State,
Yeah, Caleb
and
Downs, yeah.
Caleb Downs, and I mean, they just got hurt by the portal with the coaching transition, and it's hard to get those impact type guys when you hire new staff and you don't have a lot of time to recruit. So I just think it's more about the Jimmy and Joes right now. Going into the season, they had offensive line issues. And they had DB issues, and that's kind of what you're seeing still, the things that they need to get straight right now.
Yeah, and I think we all know, again, you push people really hard, you better have some fun. I mean, I remember, God, who doesn't remember being pushed real hard and at the end, cutting up and, so what? And I think I was just commenting on that because that's
No,
what people are
it's a
saying.
good point. It's a good point, and it makes sense on the surface. But I think people are looking for a reason when really that they just have some personnel issues, and it's hard. I mean, Ole Miss has personnel issues right now. There at running back with Quinshon, who I still think's the best running back in the country over that at Ohio State, and then Bentley, their second guy, they're not playing for whatever reason. And you see the guys filling their spots, and it's a big drop off.
It is, Rodney.
Well, but Rob, listen. Let me be clear. And my response was mainly to it. It's a frustrating thing because every time something doesn't go right, the fans, and I've been hearing it since Saturday. It's every little thing now. Saban didn't do this, and I knew it was coming. I lived through the Bryant transition to Ray Perkins.
Oh yeah,
so it's everything about what's not being done, or what is being done, how they're doing it, and it's just it's not really those things necessarily. Maybe in some cases there are some things, but what it really is getting back to what I said. It's the defense, and I mean I don't know how they're going to get it fixed, or if they get it fixed this year.
I think what the biggest problem is, and this is why Yancy got me sold on Ole Miss, was the depth on that front seven at Ole Miss, 12 defensive linemen they can trust. What kind of job is Freddie Roach doing, Rodney, with Alabama's front seven? Oh, the defensive lineman, that's what he's in charge of. And how good a job are they doing of developing those guys? And you mentioned it way before anybody else, and it was a harbinger of things to come. All the guys that left, but Alabama still had the number 1 or 2 recruiting class in the country, but it was the guys like Caleb Downs that left. Quinshon Judkins left Ole Miss, and both of them are at Ohio State. And you know what? When you lose guys like that, that's like losing, some big law firm and you lose one of the partners. He goes to a competitor. That's tough to overcome short term.
Well, yeah, you're asking about the defensive line.
Yeah.
They just lost one yesterday. Jaheim Otis upped and quit, and I'm going to guess here, Yancy, he's going to end up at Ole Miss. He and Pete are really close. And he's from Mississippi, so I suspect he'll end up at Ole Miss. But a year ago, before the 2023 season, Cole Kubelik, who I respect greatly, his evaluations.
I do too.
He said he thought Otis was the best defensive line prospect in the SEC. And honestly, he's just never gotten any better since his freshman year, which he flashed a lot of potential. I mean, this is a guy that came in weighing 416 pounds, and he lost 100 pounds. I don't know what all happened since that time, since the freshman year, whatever. I've heard various things that his work ethic wasn't great. There were different things. I don't know. As far as the development of the defensive line as a whole, you know what? You talk to different people, and they say, it's not fundamentally the most sound defensive line, and not just this year, but the last few years.
Yep.
Whether it's technique, using their hands, keeping proper leverage, all of those things. Kalen DeBoer and Womack both said the same thing 2 weeks ago, or a few weeks ago, that, fundamentally techniques, all these things were not up to snuff. And Womack even said he didn't think the defensive line versus the run was playing up to potential. So I'm not going to say anything in terms of evaluating Freddie Roach's job. This might be have a I don't know if it's a change in scheme in some ways that's hurt them or whatever, but the defensive line certainly, to me, and I told you guys in August, I thought the defensive line was one of the more impressive physically looking groups they'd had in a few years. I thought athletically they moved really well. Yeah. And even Womack said himself in August, he said, this defensive line should be really, really good.
Yeah.
So far, been average.
Yeah. That's it. Let me say something real quick. Just got a note from our friend Frank Duffy, who's a big part of our show, the Cajun Navy. I just want to say, folks, what's going on? Got a hurricane coming to Florida tomorrow, but up in East Tennessee, North Georgia, Western North Carolina, there's an effort by the people. We the people. It's unbelievable what is going on up there. And I've also been told, in addition to what the Cajun Navy's doing, Samaritan's Purse, that's Franklin Graham, do what you can, and also be ready to help these people in Florida where this hurricane's coming. So our viewers on this show, we will do whatever we can to get the word out to help you. But just Frank Duffy and those people, those are, big LSU, it's purple and gold up there everywhere. That's the SEC. And this is the greatest family of fans in the world. Just thought I'd mention that. I'm slightly biased, but I got to say that. Okay, Rodney, you heard what he just Yancy, you heard what Rodney just said.
Yeah.
What about Pete Golding at Ole Miss? I've been seeing some of the stuff of him in the locker room with his players and all. And Rodney mentioned, don't be surprised if Jaheim Otis doesn't transfer to Ole Miss. This is the portal. And in the past, when coaches left, they had those relationships, but now those relationships can be converted quickly to cash.
Yeah, Jaheim, I've been watching him since I believe he was in seventh grade.
How much did he weigh in seventh grade, by the way?
He's been a 300 pounder since he was 7 years old.
Like Rodney said, he's a guy that got in shape and came out like a bull in the SEC, and he's not in that prime shape anymore, and he's not playing like it. He fell down to third string, and because of it, and he wasn't happy because of his playing time. But guess what? You need to keep yourself in shape. So we'll see if he does that at Ole Miss or not. He was extremely close, transferred a couple times before now, and he's really close with Golden, like you said, and we'll see what happens with that. But as far as Pete, for whatever reason, I don't know why the Bama fans really kind of made him to be not that good of a defensive coordinator. And,
He
from
followed
what,
Kirby and Pruitt. That's part of it.
Yeah,
and
Rodney. That's a very good point. Yeah,
I was always impressed with what he did at Bama, but who didn't do well at Bama, right? Under Nick Saban, you could have thrown anybody in there. So it was really hard to tell if it was the coach or the system or, because they got 5 stars dotted everywhere. But I could tell you he's been Lane Kiffin's best hire during his coaching career, not only at Ole Miss, but anywhere he's been. He's taken, the program to another level. He's now made Ole Miss into an elite defensive school here, and you can't go without saying Dare Joyner, the defensive line coach, who continues to put up these deep and talented defensive lines at Ole Miss. But Pete Golden is definitely the trigger man, and I don't think there's a better fit for Ole Miss defensively than Pete right now.
yeah, and you got LSU coming up Saturday. I want to ask you about your thoughts on that because we know I've seen some of the signs out in front of the fraternity and sorority houses welcoming Ole Miss with open arms.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, I
lovely.
mean, look, I mean,
God.
this is, for half the fan base, the biggest rival is LSU,
Yep.
especially if you're in Jackson, Mississippi South, and the people in North Mississippi, they look at Mississippi State as the biggest rival. But there's a lot of, and LSU. You look at their 10 biggest games in school history outside their 7 involve Ole Miss, right? So
Yeah.
it goes both ways. You look at stat wise, Ole Miss is number 1 in the SEC in offense. LSU is 4. Ole Miss is number 4 in the SEC on defense, and LSU's 14th. So Ole Miss is more well rounded, but we all know that they got an outstanding quarterback, a guy that has got as good as arm or maybe better than anybody in the country in college football. Nuss is he's really in a groove right now. They got 3 really talented wide receivers, a talented tight end, 2 talented offensive tackles, and an emerging running back, a freshman running back. So offensively, they really seem to be coming into their own. Defensively, Ole Miss is coming into their own, but they certainly haven't faced any offensive that are potent like LSU. So, again, I think it's going to come down to, can Ole Miss start establishing a running game, and how much pressure can they get on us? As good as Army as he has, he's not exactly someone like a Jaden Daniels that can make plays with his feet. He's got good enough feet, but
Yeah.
he's definitely gonna make hay with his arms. So they got to get pressure with those front 4.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun one. Rodney, you got South Carolina coming to Bryant-Denny Stadium, and God forbid they ever take Dr. Denny's name off that stadium because from 1912 to 1936, in the 24 years he was there, enrollment increased 1,000% from 500 to 5,000 students. And having the first accredited college of business at a state university in the Deep South at Alabama, established 1917, the School of Commerce, that is a big reason Bama football still prospers to this day. So talk about Carolina, that matchup. And let me say, before we close, most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. Go out and help people. Find ways to help. We got a lot going on, folks. We got a lot of people that can help, that want to help. I like that Samaritan's Purse. That's Franklin Graham's organization, the Cajun Navy. If you've got suggestions on how to help. But I love helping other people. And spread it around, folks. But Rodney, close us out with your thoughts on Bama and South Carolina. Great show today, everybody.
Well, I mean, obviously it's a big game, right? I mean, I know that cliche, but yeah, I think that defensively, I mean, obviously Ole Miss did a great job. What they hold them to 3? Is that what it was? 27-3.
Yeah,
I think it was.
27-3. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I think this is a big game for Alabama to come out in terms of just kind of regathering themselves, gaining some confidence back. But I'll say this too. I mean, you got to play with a lot of energy and passion, and coming off that Georgia game like they did, I think Alabama was a little flat versus Vanderbilt, and I think they they kind of underestimated Vanderbilt. So I think hopefully they learned a lot of things. Hopefully they were humbled a little bit, and we'll see if it kind of shows up against South Carolina.
Yeah, and you've lost games before, and it's hard to go undefeated in the world we live in today. But God, what a season, man! I mean, we're coming up,
and I think we're going to see a lot more. I think we're going to see some teams knocked off in turn that games that we didn't expect as we move along. I really do.
Yeah. Miami being one of them, they will get a loss very shortly. Look, you can lose a game or two now.
If they can get the replay booth out of it, they might.
Yeah, and one word we need, a term, a phrase we need to remove from the lexicon is unbelievable, because that means you didn't believe to begin with. I mean, but anything is possible in today's world. And Rodney, today when you're at Archibald's or Taco Casa for lunch, you'll be thinking about that. And Rodney, love having you on here. And same thing, Yancy and Chris Lee, executive producer Brendan Martin. Man, I'll tell you one thing: you never run out of stuff to talk about year round when you're covering the SEC, because it's nonstop entertainment, and the fans are all so reasonable and patient. That's what makes it so much fun. So. See y'all in the morning. Thanks for watching. Good night, John Boy. Have a great day.
In a perfect world, you'd set a health goal and results would happen overnight. In this world, the real world, it takes time, dedication, and the right support to achieve your best self. The Vitamin Shopp's health enthusiasts are here to make sure you're not wasting a single moment on the wrong supplements. From the highest quality sports nutrition and superfoods to the most sought after trends, you'll find a huge variety of science-backed solutions for every goal, and the people to help guide you along the path to greatness.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am Ari Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.